I have shared a bit before that in high school and college, I sang in worship bands in my churches. Both in my youth group praise band and in my college Vespers band, I was a singer. I was not only a singer, but I was a loud singer. It is important to me as a worship leader to sing in such a way that other people can sing along. And at that point, what I knew that what gets me to sing along is volume. I grew up listening to Celine Dion and Shania Twain, turned all the way up in the car with my mom, singing loudly because no one could hear my mom and I over Celine and Shania. When I was in high school, my friends and I would drive around town scream singing all of our teenage angst. Okay, so not only was me singing with volume and passion good for other people and those I was leading in worship, but it was also extremely cathartic to me. My loud, far-projecting singing voice, though, was more than this. It was the source of my power. It was the thing that gave me a place in my community. It was the gift that designated me as a song leader. It was the thing that helped people see God in me. It was central to my identity. Central to a woman's identity in first century Palestine is her relation to men in her family. We may have judgment on this dynamic now, but it's important to recognize this as the case for the widow in our story this morning. The Sadducees are a group who might be comparable to our modern-day academics. They are people committed to what they can logic, what they can deduce from the written word of the Torah. They do not base their beliefs or their assents on invisible things like spirit or angels or the resurrection. And these Sadducees in the temple, the place appropriate for theological questions such as these, the place appropriate for religious debate and learning through asking questions, they ask Jesus what they think is an impossible question. In the resurrection, whose wife is the woman whose 7 husbands died and has no children? They think it's an impossible question because in first century Palestine, identity is solely based on one's relation to another. This is particularly true for women, but it's also true for men. Men are identified in the Bible as the sons of their fathers, as having come from their particular tribe or their town. The Gospels are full of men like this: the sons of Zebedee, Joseph of Arimathea, Jesus of Nazareth. So if identity is based on our relations, on who we belong to, then who does the widow times 7 belong to? The summer before I went to seminary, so right after college, I was invited to chaperone and lead worship for the youth group that I grew up in. The middle school group was going on their summer trip, the one that I had been on 3 times, and so I got to go along. A friend I'd grown up with who played guitar met us there and joined me for the evening worship time. It felt like things were coming full circle for me. I was here in this little chapel in this church somewhere, leading the next generation of youth in my youth group in the worship songs that have formed me, the songs that have been close to my heart for years. I was here in this little chapel with hope in my heart for what was ahead. I'd been preparing for seminary for so long. And before that, I'd cried out to God for purpose and for meaning and for direction, and now I had it. This voice God had given me, this loud voice of a leader, of someone who can command a room, a voice of someone who can stand up against injustice and stand up for the unjustly treated, is finally going to be fully realized. This voice is going to be further molded and grown and resourced so that I can be who I truly am, who God has destined me to be. In the middle of a song I'd sung 1,000 times, my voice broke. Something tore or pulled in my throat, and it hurt. What if the worst thing imaginable actually happens? What if you marry 7 times and every last one of them dies? What if all of your fears come true? What if? It is easy and lazy to bully the Sadducees for their lack of faith. It is anti-Semitic to bully the Sadducees and blame them for their lack of faith, for not believing in the resurrection. They are us. To gawk at the fact that they don't believe in the resurrection is not what Jesus does here. For a lot of reasons, I'm sure, but one of them being the question that they ask gets at a question that everyone asks. What if somebody loses everything? What then? I think that Jesus counts it as faithfulness to look into the face of death, to look into the face of existential fear and doubt and terror that lurks just out of the corners of our eyes, and to ask God to answer for it. What will be true of you, of me, if the looming pestilence that stalks me in the night manifests itself in the circumstances of my life? Whose will I be if I am destroyed? What does it mean of you, O God of the living, if everyone dies? If I die, if the core of who I am is threatened, taken away, what then? I know, it was just my voice, but I'd already lost the family as I knew it through divorce. By going to seminary in Chicago, I was losing the communities I had found my place in part because of my voice. I didn't know if I'd be able to find a place in seminary without my voice. I was going there to learn to be a preacher, a worship leader, a teacher of all things essential to my identity that required my voice. Would I ever command a room again? Would I ever sing again? Who even am I? One of the ways we test theology is by taking it to its furthest logical conclusion. If our theology is, let's say, everything happens for a reason, then we must test it by asking, what is a good enough reason for terrorism? Does God have a good reason for terrorism? No. The theology does not stand against its most extreme application. So if it can't stand in the extreme, it doesn't stand in the minor issues of life. So if Jesus is going to claim resurrection as theology, as truth, then the Sadducees ask, how does it work for the people who have lost their identity, who aren't really people at all anymore, people who have lost their place in the world? Who will they be then? How will they be arranged societally? What place will they have if they have lost everything? Jesus' answer is this: marriage on earth is irrelevant in resurrection. The circumstances that throw your life into disarray, the characteristics or statuses you all gather your identity from are not relevant in the same way in the resurrection. Those who have found a place in the resurrection are children of God, a status and identity which does not waver but is everlasting. And anyway, you Sadducees, you hold tightly to Torah. Even Moses seemed to believe in the resurrection of the dead. He called the living God, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. If God is a God of the living, Jesus takes this idea to its furthest conclusion, then how can Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob be in death? They cannot. For to God, all are alive. So in two fell swoops of theological maneuver, Jesus both assures the dignity of this hypothetical widow in the resurrection and offers evidence from the Sadducees' own trusted source of information for the resurrection. Looking into that shadow of death that lurks just beyond our peripheral vision, that creeps its way closer into focus all the time, looking at it is a faithful act. Because there are only two possibilities. Either we will be swallowed up by it, or God will lead us through it with his rod and staff. Taking an honest look at the possibility of your own suffering and your own death is faithful, because it means that you trust that you'll somehow be resurrected on the other side of it. I didn't sing for months. I did not look at that existential possibility of never being myself again, really. I think because I was thrown into it. I didn't really have a choice. It was all around me. I felt swallowed by it. I didn't go to the doctor because I was afraid of what they might say. I did not sing for months. A month or so into seminary beginning, I went to chapel with a friend, and it was time to sing. Like I'd done forever, without thinking, I took the hymnal, flipped to the right page, and started to sing. What came out was something. It was not the song I meant to sing. None of the notes I tried to hit were coming out of my throat. It was bad. So I looked at my friend with wide eyes, and he looked back, and we both giggled. Because it was silly, and I didn't need to sing well to be his friend, and I didn't need to lead everyone in song. These were my people, and they would be my people whether or not I had this particular gift to offer them. This giggle felt like comfort. Our shocked glances looked like a rod and a staff. Christ was leading me through the valley of the shadow of death, and it felt like resurrection. Amen.